Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Everybody's kind of coming in, filling in the participants. So we are going to give it just 1 or 2 minutes before for everybody to get in. I know we've got a number of people. Oh, there's everybody kind of filling in. We've got a number of people signed up today. So we're going to give it one more second before we get started. All right, we are at 2 after, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I know a few people will be coming in as we get going, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and get started. So, good morning, everybody. I'm your host, Rachel Buchanan. I'm excited to be here with you today to talk about why and how facilities and IT can be great partners. I've worked with, gosh, hundreds of schools and colleges across the entire United States. And in my 25 plus years doing this, one thing I've has remained pretty consistent. There seems to be a little bit of tension or just maybe not always the best working relationship between facilities and IT. Certainly not always the case, but pretty consistently that's what I find. And so I've always thought, man, it would be so much better if they worked more closely together. And when I met our guest speaker today, Katelyn, she had the same idea. She's coming at it from an IT perspective. And so I said, man, let's hop on a call and talk about this. So everybody, excuse me. So again, we're excited to have you. It's only going to be 30 minutes, so we're going to get quick in and quick out. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the agenda, but we are going to cover some common misperceptions, um, some keys to success for working together. This doesn't really even necessarily have to be just IT and facilities. That's our focus for today, but it's really how to work better together across departments. And then we're going to talk about some real world results and the benefit that they've seen at Assabet Valley as a result of working together. So before we do that, I want to play a little game called Who's Responsible? So if everybody can find their chat box, I'm going to put it right here. Um, so good morning. Okay, can everybody see? And can everybody find your chat box? So if you can find your chat box, just pop a quick hi so I know everybody's in there. And I've got a couple of questions. So, okay, great. Okay, I'm seeing got it. Okay, so at your school, who's responsible for the smart controls on doors if you have them? Facilities, IT, both, or someone totally different? Let me hear from you. Who's responsible? Okay, we've got, yep, all right. We've won both. All right, good, good. We've got facilities, oh, security, IT. Okay, great. Okay, I've got another one for you. What about security cameras? Who's responsible at your school? Okay, IT, security, both. Okay. All right. Oh, facilities. Okay. All right. Great. Okay. One last one. And this isn't a trick question. Who's responsible for renovations? Maybe it's a little trick question, but let me see. Who at your school is responsible? Facilities. Okay. All right. Most people are saying facilities. Okay, good. Well, one more. I've got a poll for you. Let's see if this launches. Okay. How closely do you work together with your counterpart, whether you're on the facility side or the IT side? Would you say you rarely work together, occasionally collaborate, you've got some joint projects, you work together as team players, or your work besties? What would you say? Okay. All right. It looks like, oh, we got a little bit of rarely. Okay. We've got some, I'm gonna Oh, a fun fact. You need to now do HVAC. Okay, good, Cindy. We're going to talk about that very thing in here just as shortly. So, okay, looks like most people are somewhere between occasionally and some joint projects. So I think we are in good company. So let's get back to it here. Let me get I've got multiple screens going on. So I gotta click in several different places. So thank you for being patient with me. Okay, so I want to introduce our guest speaker today, Katelyn Bourdreau. Did I say that right?
Mhm.
Okay, perfect. And Katelyn is the Director of Educational Technology and Digital Literacy at Assabet Valley Regional Technical School District. Katelyn has transformed her district's one-to-one technology program, began a co-op program within the district's technology department, implemented a district-wide technology advisory committee, and deployed 21st century technology into every learning space at Assabet Valley. So she's been quite busy since she's been there. But prior to joining, Katelyn was a technology integration specialist and an elementary classroom teacher. We just had a conversation before you guys joined about that. She received her bachelor's in elementary education from Farmington State University and a master's in special education from American International College. She also holds a Chief Technology Officer certificate from Farmington State University and Massachusetts Educational Technology Administration Association. So thank you, Katelyn, for joining us today.
Thanks,
I'm
Rachel.
excited to have you. And I know that you've sat in a lot of different seats, between your teaching career and things like that. So I'm really excited to hear what you've got to share for us today. So let's get started. When you came into Assabet Valley, what was happening and what did you notice about the relationship between your department and the facilities department?
For sure. So when I had first started at Assabet, there actually wasn't a technology director per se. There was someone who was acting as a manager in the position, who really focused more so on the network piece of things. And their relationship with facilities was good. But his main focus was really on the network side of things. So when it came down to the planning and getting ready for things and thinking about the future, a lot of that mindset wasn't quite there. And so I had walked into a place where there was not a ton of planning or foresight about what the future was going to look like from a joint perspective of IT and facilities. And shortly after that gentleman actually left. And so when I was left, I was in this place where I had a lot to figure out in a short amount of time. So things kind of got interesting.
So, one of the things that I shared was through the course of my long career that I see this kind of tension between facilities and IT, or just maybe even if it's not tension, just kind of a lack of understanding of the need to work together. Why do you think that's so kind of pervasive across schools?
I think there are a couple of reasons, Rachel. So the first one being sometimes there's that like tales all this time. I've been here for 30 years. I know everything about this school, and I'm going to kind of keep it close to my heart. And because I'm the person who knows that, that can be one reason. The other reason being there's always, I feel like this back and forth about the who owns it and kind of that mindset of this belongs in this silo and this belongs in this silo when really the way that things are starting to look these days, like somebody mentioned the HVAC system, that's a perfect example of something that like historically was always in a facility silo, but as things are moving more digitized and they're touching our networks, we're going to have to start working together, or what we're seeing sometimes is some of this shifting happening. And so I think there's a lot of uncertainty about what belongs to who sometimes. And if you don't have this relationship with your facilities or IT director, things can get kind of muddled about what goes where or if we're working on it together.
Yeah, and I think one thing too is just kind of a general lack of understanding about what the other department does. And sometimes if one side is asking about I see it a lot when IT is asking, wanting to interfere, quote unquote, with
Mhm.
facilities. It feels like interference, but maybe a lack of understanding about how they could partner and why they're asking those questions or why they want to be involved might feel like interference when really it's just an opportunity to work well together. And
Mhm.
I mean, of course, one of my personal favorites is it's just the way we've always done it. So let's talk about that a little bit. So let's talk about how did you I guess what we should start is to say one of the things that Caitlin and I agree on, well, a lot of things, but one of them is that communication is one of the keys to success for breaking down some of those silos and overcoming some of those things. So tell me, what are some of the keys to success when it comes to communication?
So the first thing I did when that gentleman left was I went to my facilities director and I was like, I need your phone number. Like I already know that I'm going to be in a place where he's been here for over 20 years. He knows this building like the back of his hand. I wasn't left with a lot of documentation, like who was the next best person. And it was a two-person department. So the one person that was left was a data person. So there wasn't a whole lot of background knowledge in the building. And so my facilities director was amazing and was like, yep, here you go, handed me his phone number. And so we were lucky. We started off on the right foot in that regard. He's been super helpful. He's an awesome guy. And we are in honestly constant communication about things that are going on in the building, whether it be texts or phone calls. One of the things that we did do is we brought in Operations Hero as a ticketing system for both IT and facilities. And so that's helped a lot. They were using two separate systems when I first started. So having one system where they are kind of helps keep both of us informed about what's going on in the building, maybe some events. If I complete a part of a project or my department completes a part of a project, I can put a note in a ticket and then I can hand it over to him and say, okay, we did this part, we're here, here, and here. And then his team can kind of pick up and do the next part or vice versa. And it's just that constant back and forth with him and his department and my department, kind of keeping a pulse on where things are and where they're going. But if I would be lying if I said I go, a couple of days without talking to him. I think the most we've gone is like 2 or 3 days at this point. Because there's just
You're more in the
always
work.
something.
You sound like more in the work bestie category.
Yes.
Well, and you talked about the technology. Nobody on this call is going to be surprised. We've got an IT director and an IT company on the call, but one of the keys to the success is we do think is technology and knowing how to leverage that technology in a helpful way. Can you share some additional real world examples of how you partner together with technology?
Yep. So I had talked about our ticketing system before. Here's actually a screenshot from our platform and what that looks like and the things that we do and how we move them back and forth. And the other piece of this is just, again, it's the communication through technology piece. And this also allows us to have some sort of it feels funny to say paper trail because it's not paper trail at all, but a trail of kind of what's happened. And we can go back and look at things and say, oh yeah, we called this company or we started at this point. And it's a joint place that we share. So even within the platform that we use, we do all of our event scheduling in there. And it's been a huge help. We actually have a shared administrative assistant too, which helps, I think, our department stay more connected with that. And so like if there's an event coming up, she'll let us know. We'll know, okay, our facilities department needs to go and set up the tables. I need to go in and make sure the AV is set up. So having a shared electronic space has been really helpful for us to stay in step and to kind of avoid those things slipping through the cracks in the communication piece.
And what about, I know one of the things we had talked about earlier, and we asked a question that was kind of a mixed bag. Talk a little bit about your doors and locks, because I know you guys have a digital system there.
Yep. So we're actually in the process of switching over our doors and locks right now. And so when I first came in, it's a program that needs a lot. It's heavy computer programming, but there's also that part of like your doors and locks that are the physical pieces, the pins, the crash bars, and things of that nature. And so when I first started, I had talked to our facilities director about okay, how do we go about this? What are we going to do? And so the way that we typically handle it now is, well, we look at it together most of the time, and then we say, okay, this looks like it might be a programming issue. So myself and my team will go back, we'll take a look at it, we'll reprogram, we'll go check the door. If there's a problem with the door still, we'll say, okay, looks like it might be a mechanical issue, and then the facilities team might pop in. And so we kind of have it down now where we know like, and the facilities director and myself can sometimes go to the problem and see like, yeah, this is sounding more like a mechanical issue or this is sounding more like a program issue. But that's one area we're constantly going back and forth on.
Well, I think you're kind of getting into this concept of a shared partnership. And this was kind of language that you used when we talked earlier, and I love this concept. Talk a little bit more about what you mean there.
Yep. So the perfect example for this is like our summer work. And so we sit down, we actually have our summer meeting today. to go through the different projects that IT and facilities have throughout the summer when nobody's in the building. And what we try and do is we try and piggyback on each other based on where we're going to be in the building. So like a perfect example would be facilities is going to go around, they're going to remove everything out of the classrooms, wax the floors. What that means is they're going to unplug everything that's in there and take it all out. And so we have hired some co-op students that are high school students that work with us in the summer, and we share them. And they have training in both facilities and IT, and they help us go around kind of behind the facilities team, and they'll go back in, for example, and plug all those things back in. And that's something I feel like in some districts that I've worked in has been a disconnect where facilities takes everything out, they put it back in, and then the teacher shows up and like, oh, maybe that computer was supposed to be re-imaged, or oh, my projector wasn't plugged back in. So we try and make calendars and be mindful of where we're going to be in different areas. And then we also talk about the projects that we're going to be doing. So this summer we're revamping our camera system. So it's going to be important for my facilities director to know we're going to be in this area during this week and we're going to need access to that. So like they won't wax that area or they won't be doing work in that area. We try and stay on the same page for that.
That's awesome. And I know we've got here um uh, some mapping stuff. Tell me a little bit more about this.
This is so we will sit down together usually and we'll go through and say, okay, we're gonna be waxing this area during these dates. And we also will share this with the other administration in the school because we have camps and things that happen throughout the summer, but also for the administrators that are still in the building, just kind of knowing what's going on during what dates and don't come in this door or things are going to be unplugged in this area. If you go to call someone in that office, like the phone's not going to ring. So making sure that we are constantly communicating with each other, but then sharing our joint communication to our shared community as well. And it's funny because sometimes people will come up to him or myself and say like, I'm not sure if this is a you problem or a facilities problem. And I'll say, oh, like we actually share that. And so like either of us can help out. And so I think that's been a huge piece of the partnership and the communication piece, not only with ourselves, but with the community as well.
You bring up a good point. Do you think, do you feel like now that you've kind of established a shared partnership and these rhythms of working together, do you feel like your stakeholders, your teachers, your administrators, all of those folks have benefited? I know they have, but have they noticed the difference, I guess is what I'm really asking.
I think what I can say with confidence is that I've been here, I'm in my third year right now, and the amount that we've accomplished in those 3 years together has been huge. And I know that I could not have accomplished that working in a silo by myself with my team. Like it just would not have been possible. So there's definitely been some huge benefits there. And in return, it's really benefited the students and the teachers. So it's been nice to see.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's share, let's brag a little bit. Tell a little bit about some of these cool projects that you guys have been able to do together. So we talked about renovations in the trick question. So tell us a little bit about these renovations.
Yeah. So the first thing when I walked in, oh, I'm in a 50-year-old school building. And so there are some areas of our building that have had some really nice renovations, and then there are some that maybe haven't had a renovation in a long time. And the first area that I noticed when I walked in was our auditorium. So they were using a projector on a cart to have presentations, and they would try to avoid doing anything on the stage when they were having presentations or doing something with students because students would walk across, it would cut the projector off. So I really went in there and I said, we need to make this more of a space where people want to be, that can be more widely used for us in the community. So we decided to do a renovation, a mini AV renovation in our auditorium, and we put up a mounted projector in the ceiling. We mounted some TVs on the walls, and then we redid all the sound. And that to most people would be typically an IT project, I feel like. And so the caveat with this being it's a 50-year-old building, right? And I'm at this point, I was like 6 months in. And so these vendors are coming in saying, okay, I need to know where the nearest electrical box is. I need to know what kind of amp you're running to run this projector. And I'm standing there going, I'm not sure. So that's where the facilities director and I worked together because he has that knowledge, right? He was the school's electrician before he was the director. So he knows all of these things right off the top of his hand. Instead of me saying, oh, I'm going to have to get back to you, I'm not sure about that. I just brought him in and we worked together and we were able to complete the project and troubleshoot some things. And it was great. It was my first experience with us really working closely together to complete something. And I definitely, I'm learning still to this day, but he knows all those nooks and crannies and closets where things might be hidden from, 50 years ago that I would have never guessed.
And I'm sure he probably really appreciates being able to contribute in that way since he does know it so well. Some random vendor or contractor coming in making recommendations that he knows isn't going to work. So I think
Yep.
that's probably a win for him too. So let's talk a little bit about vendors because being a vendor, I know the benefit of working collaboratively both with both counterparts. But tell me from your perspective.
So, for instance, like the doors is a great example. The vendor that we use does both the programming side and the hardware side. So we try to troubleshoot in-house. And if both of our teams try and we can't get it, we have a vendor that knows both of us that does both parts. And I think that has created some really good relationships with the vendors that we use because they know we've already tried to take it to a certain extent. And I guess I've talked to the people in my building who do facilities, or yes, they've talked to the people who do the programming in the building. Um, and then the other piece of that is like, for example, like Operations Hero is one that we have a shared vendor. We've built relationships with people. We've been able to save money instead of using two different systems in times. We have, people that I use that might go down and help the facilities department with somebody and vice versa. So having those strong relationships with our vendors has really helped. And we know now to ask each other like, hey, I'm looking at this vendor. Have you heard anything about them? Like I haven't heard anything in my end of the world, but sometimes, different vendors jump from the way things are moving, sometimes facilities, and they encroach into kind of the IT space or vice versa. And so it's been helpful to have those conversations.
That was one thing I was going to ask is do you have any kind of I don't want to say policy, but yeah, policy for who signs off on vendors? Like, could the facilities department, they could contract with their own vendor and they don't need to talk to you about it, or maybe they wouldn't do that because of your working partnership. But tell me a little bit about how that works, because I know that can be tricky on in a lot of schools.
If it's something, so the way that we try to do it, if it's something that's going to include the other partner, so door, I'm sticking with the door example because it's an easy
Yeah.
one. I will automatically include the facilities director in the conversation from the get-go. And if he decides, yep, I'm all set, like I don't really need to hear much more, I can keep going, but I always, and he vice versa does the same thing. If he has somebody coming in to troubleshoot the HVAC system, he'll let me know so that we have somebody available to work with them if they need it, because we know that it's remoting in through our servers. So we try to kind of keep that mutual respect and communication within our departments, even if it's just letting the other person know, hey, we're
Okay.
having these
Yeah.
people come in today.
Yeah. And then talk about your building and space planning, how you guys do that.
Yep. So, like I said, 50-year-old building. They did not have a technology director before I started. So there's definitely a lot of upgrading that's happening. And so, our building has a very unique footprint. And so having someone who's been here for 20 years that knows the spaces, that knows the capabilities of the different areas has been hugely helpful in trying to plan ahead for what we're trying to do. So like we replaced all of our access points in our building 2 years ago now. And, things down to the IDF closets that are my responsibility, but, somebody having the historical knowledge of, yeah, those switches have been there for like 10 plus years, you might need to think about that, was hugely helpful. And then the other piece of that is learning about the capabilities of different spaces. So I might have this great idea to put in new AV in the space, and the facilities director might say, I don't know that the outlets are wired for that. It could be done or it couldn't be done. So having that back and forth about the spaces that we have, what they can be used for, and if it's possible or not, and vice versa. So he might come to me and say, hey, I noticed we could probably put an interactive board in this room. Like, what do you think about it? And I'll say, oh, we don't have a network drop in there, but we can pop one in for another closet. So just having that back and forth about the different spaces we have in the building has been huge.
Yeah, I like that. And I can just see, just again, having the opportunity to be part of the planning up front, just saves so many problems down the road and thinking about having everybody at the table. I mean, even the energy impact of what that project might be. And if facilities, I don't know who at your school who's responsible for the utility bills, but a lot of times it's facilities, and sometimes those IT projects can create wreak a little havoc, on those energy bills. So
For
um
sure.
well, I think we're getting close to the end. So I did want to let everybody know, feel free to use that chat function if you have any questions for Katelyn about any of the projects, any of the vendors, if you guys are considering different door manufacturers or vendors or anything like that, please feel free. But I just kind of wanted to wrap up today and just say, well, first of all, Katelyn, thank you so much for sharing kind of what you've done and how it's worked, and the really cool projects that you guys have been able to do. I think one of the things that I do feel really strongly and passionately about is that we are better together, and that's collectively across all departments, but especially in so many facets where IT and facilities cross lines and cross paths. We are better when we can work together. So you've got shared projects, most likely shared vendors. So if we can really pull together as partners, it will improve things both for yourself, and ultimately we'll be able to support our students in a better way. So, and that's, I think, what we're all here for, right? So um, I just want to, that's all I've got today for you. So, I just want to thank everybody for being here. And, I promise it will be short and sweet at 30 minutes, and we're right at it. So, everybody feel free to stick around, chat us up. I can open up the lines if anybody wants to ask Katelyn any questions. But if not, you guys have a great afternoon. Thanks, everybody.